It was a rainy Tuesday, the kind where the sky seemed to weep for all the broken souls on earth. Traffic splashed through puddles, umbrellas collided on the sidewalk, and people moved with a cold urgency, ignoring anything that wasn't on their agenda. But amid the blur of rushing heels and briefcases, a young woman stood still under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. Soaked to the bone, with her matted hair clinging to her gaunt cheeks, she stepped forward and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" She wasn't begging. She wasn't whining. She was simply surviving. And yet, when the sharply dressed man in front of her turned around and looked into her eyes, something shifted. Something impossible. A miracle began. Right finger if you believe in the power of kindness, second chances, and the beauty of unseen miracles. Please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support helps these stories of compassion reach more hearts. She wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, Alara Hastings had dreams stitched into her very bones. She was raised in a modest home by a single mother who cleaned offices at night and hummed lullabies in the morning. Alara had promise. Teachers said she could go far. And for a while, she did. She got into college, juggled 2 jobs, made honor roll, and even auditioned for off-Broadway shows. But life has a cruel way of testing the ones who fight the hardest. Her mother's cancer came like a storm with no warning. The bills came faster than the test results, and soon Alara was drowning. She dropped out of school, took more hours at her waitressing job, and eventually sold off her prized possessions, her guitar, her sketchbooks, even her late father's watch, just to afford a few more days of chemo. But it wasn't enough. Her mother died holding Alara's hand, apologizing for leaving her alone in the world. After that, the world moved on, but Alara couldn't. With no savings, no family, and no roof over her head, she drifted. First it was shelters, then park benches, then the abandoned stairwell behind a bakery that threw out unsold bread at midnight. She became invisible. People averted their gaze, clutched their bags tighter, and crossed the street when they saw her. All except one man who changed everything. That day, she hadn't eaten in nearly 3 days. Her stomach cramped with hunger, but her pride had always stopped her from begging. She would wait until diners left, and then she'd quietly ask the staff if they were discarding anything. Most said no. Some offered her coffee. But today, she saw him. A sharply dressed man in his late 50s, wearing an expensive navy blue suit, gold cufflinks, and the weary eyes of someone who had seen too much. He sat at the corner table of La Rosa, a luxury restaurant that Alara could only dream of entering. She waited outside in the rain, watching as he pushed his barely touched pasta aside. He was lost in thought, fingers rubbing the edge of a leather-bound notebook. When he rose, she stepped forward, heart pounding. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" she asked softly. He turned, startled. But when their eyes met, hers full of silent pleading, his full of something long buried, time froze. She expected dismissal, pity, maybe disgust. But instead, he looked at her like he recognized something. Not her face, but her pain. After a beat, he handed her the takeout box. She thanked him with trembling hands, then turned to leave. But he called after her, "Wait." And then, something strange happened. He asked her to sit. Inside. Alara was stunned. She refused at first, insisting she was fine. But he was firm, gentle but firm. The manager looked confused, the hostess alarmed. But when he mentioned his name, the staff's attitudes changed. "That's Mr. Lennox. He owns half the block," one whispered. Over a hot meal, Alara told pieces of her story. Just enough. And Mr. Lennox listened. Really listened. She didn't know that this man, Gabriel Lennox, was once homeless himself. That he'd clawed his way from sleeping under a train bridge to becoming one of the most powerful real estate moguls in the city. That he had built an empire, but lost his only son to drugs years ago. Alara didn't know she reminded him of the child he couldn't save. Over the next few weeks, he showed up again. First with a thermos of soup. Then a coat. Then a question, "Would you like a job?" She thought it was a joke. But it wasn't. He offered her a chance, not a handout. He enrolled her in a hospitality training course at his hotel chain. Paid for her to stay in a women's shelter during her transition. Slowly, Alara started to bloom. She cut her hair, held her head higher. Her laughter returned, shy at first, then brighter. And Mr. Lennox, the man everyone called ruthless, started to smile again too. People whispered, judged, said she was a project. But they didn't see what he saw in her. Or what she saw in him. Months passed. Alara aced her training, started working front desk at one of Mr. Lennox's 5-star hotels. She worked hard, earned respect. One night, during a staff appreciation dinner, she stood at the podium and told her story, not for sympathy, but for the ones still in the shadows. The room was silent, and Mr. Lennox, he had tears in his eyes. But the miracle didn't end there. One evening, Alara found a young girl crying behind the hotel dumpster, barefoot, dirty, scared. The girl reminded her of herself. Alara sat with her, gave her food, and waited until help came. Later, Mr. Lennox said something that changed everything. "You don't just carry hope anymore, Alara. You pass it on." Eventually, Gabriel Lennox asked Alara to join his foundation, helping formerly homeless youth find jobs, housing, and support. She agreed, not just out of gratitude, but purpose. For the first time in years, she felt her life was part of something bigger. Today, Alara Hastings runs a transitional housing program called Second Sunrise. She's the woman on billboards, the guest on morning shows, the keynote speaker at charity galas. But she still keeps that old takeout box, cleaned and sealed, in a glass frame in her office. A reminder of the day everything changed. And as for Mr. Lennox, he's still in her life. As a mentor, a guardian, and maybe something closer to family than either of them dared to hope. Right finger if this story touched your heart, even just a little. Please like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs to believe in miracles again. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Stories Collection, so we can keep bringing you stories that heal, inspire, and move the soul. Speech balloon special request before you go. If you believe that kindness, even in the smallest form, can change a life, please tell us in the comments below, what's one act of compassion that changed your world? We read every word. Your story matters. Of course. Let's continue and expand the emotional arc and bring deeper cinematic storytelling to the final third of the story. This will not only give the story greater depth and visual beauty but will also stir the emotions further and create a lasting impact for your viewers. Years passed, but the memory of that rainy day never faded. Alara would often stand by her office window at the Second Sunrise Center and watch the city pulse with movement, each person out there carrying battles no one else could see. Her eyes, once hollow from grief, now sparkled with something sacred. Not pride, not even peace, but purpose. And in the quiet corners of her life, she still whispered the words that had once fallen from her lips in despair, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" Only now, she understood that she hadn't asked for food that day. She had asked for acknowledgement, for mercy, for a reason to keep believing. Inside the center, stories unfolded daily. Teen mothers found shelter. Veterans rediscovered dignity. Runaways found their way back to school in safety. And through every transformation, Alara was present, not as a savior, but as a survivor turned guide. She sat with them, wept with them, and told them the truth: you're not broken. You're just bruised. And bruises heal. But one story in particular changed her. A boy named Matteo came through their doors one frostbitten January evening. He was no older than 17, shaking from cold and hunger, his wrists red with cuts that hadn't healed. He didn't speak for 2 days. But on the third, Alara sat beside him in the courtyard with a warm blanket and a cup of soup. She didn't ask him to talk, just shared her story. Word by word, scar by scar. And when she finished, he whispered, "So I'm not crazy for still hoping." Her eyes filled with tears. "No, Matteo," she said, "you're not crazy. You're brave." Matteo would later graduate from the culinary program Alara helped create, become a chef at a Michelin-starred restaurant, and return to the center every weekend to cook meals for new arrivals. That, she realized, was the real miracle, not her rescue, not even her rise, but the chain reaction of healing and humanity set in motion by one forgotten girl and one lonely millionaire who chose not to look away. As the years unfolded, Gabriel Lennox grew older. His hair grayed completely, and the hard lines on his face softened. Where once he poured his energy into acquisitions and skyscrapers, now he poured it into people, into Alara's mission. One spring evening, as the city bloomed in color, he sat beside her under the cherry blossoms outside the center and said, "I thought I was building an empire. But it wasn't until I met you that I understood. I was just waiting to build something that mattered." He passed away quietly 2 years later, in his sleep. In his will, he left everything, not just his fortune, but his vision, to Second Sunrise. The foundation became global, but more importantly, it remained personal. Every child who entered its walls was given more than a bed or a hot meal. They were given a name, a purpose, and a person who believed in them. On the anniversary of his passing, Alara stood before a crowd of thousands at the new Gabriel Lennox Community Campus and shared the story again, not from memory, but from the ache still lingering in her heart. She held up the frame with the old takeout box and said, "This was once all I had. And the man who gave it to me didn't see trash, he saw a soul worth saving. I want to ask you today, not for leftovers, but for the courage to look someone in the eye and offer them a chance. One simple act of compassion can ripple into eternity." The crowd rose in applause, many wiping their eyes. That evening, the campus cafeteria served pasta. No fancy truffle oil, just simple, warm pasta in honor of the meal that changed a life. And outside, under the stars, volunteers placed candles on the pavement, each one representing a life transformed. Alara wandered quietly to the edge of the crowd. She looked up at the night sky and smiled. Not because everything had become perfect, but because the pain had found a home. Her story had made space for others to heal. And that, she believed, was the true definition of wealth. She never became rich in the traditional sense. She didn't own a mansion or wear diamonds. But she was wealthy, beyond words. In lives touched, in hope restored, in miracles sparked by mercy. And even now, when strangers approach her and ask for help, she never sees a burden. She sees herself. She remembers the rain, the shame, the hunger, and the miracle that began with just one question. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" And every time, in one way or another, she answers yes. Heart, if this story reached deep into your heart, if it reminded you that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Stories Collection. These stories exist because of you. Speech Balloon, please share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, what's one act of kindness, received or given, that changed everything for you? We'd love to read your story. It may inspire the next video we create. Thank you for watching. You are not alone. You are seen. You are loved.